The Gospel of John, chapter 5. Today we're diving into a powerful and transformative story from the Gospel of John, chapter 5. It's a passage that speaks to anyone who has ever felt stuck, helpless, or wanting for change. You know, we've all had moments in our lives where we felt like we were on the edge of a breakthrough, but couldn't quite reach it. The story of Jesus healing a man at the Pool of Bethesda reminds us that no matter how long we've been waiting, no matter how impossible our circumstances may seem, Jesus sees us, and He is ready to bring healing and transformation into our lives. Now, as we walk through this passage, my hope is that we not only understand the story on a deeper level, but that we also allow it to stir up faith in our hearts, to believe for our own breakthroughs. Let's open our hearts to the possibility that today could be the day we pick up our mats and walk into the fullness of the life God has for us. The story of the man at the Pool of Bethesda. The story in this chapter begins with Jesus going to Jerusalem for a Jewish festival. Near the sheep gate, there was a pool called Bethesda, which means house of mercy. Around the pool, a great number of disabled people would gather, the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. They came because there was a belief that from time to time an angel would stir the waters, and whoever stepped in first after the stirring would be healed. Now, amid this crowd was a man that had been an invalid for 38 years. Let that sink in for a moment. 38 years. This man had likely spent nearly 4 decades of his life in a state of paralysis, unable to move, and without hope for healing. Imagine the frustration, the resignation, the loneliness he must have felt as he watched others come and go, while his situation remained unchanged. Now Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been in this condition for a long time. And Jesus asked him a simple but profound question. Do you want to get well? Now at first this question might seem unnecessary. Of course he wants to get well, right? But Jesus was going deeper than just addressing the man's physical condition. He was probing the man's heart, asking him if he was truly ready to leave behind the life he had known for nearly 40 years. Sometimes, even in our suffering, we can grow comfortable with the familiar, and change can feel daunting, even when that change is for the better. Jesus was challenging him to not only desire physical healing, but to be open to the radical transformation that comes with it. The man replied, "Sir, I have no one to help me get into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." He wasn't just expressing frustration. He was highlighting his sense of hopelessness. He had been looking at this situation for so long that he couldn't see beyond his obstacles. His focus was on what he lacked. No one to help him. No chance of getting into the pool in time. But what he didn't realize was that he didn't need the pool. He needed Jesus. Then Jesus gave him a command. Get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Without hesitation, the man was healed. He picked up his mat and began to walk for the first time in nearly 40 years. You know, think about this for a minute. Jesus sees us in our struggles. You know, the passage emphasizes that Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time. This is important because it reminds us that Jesus sees exactly where we are. Even when we feel invisible or overlooked, Jesus is aware of our suffering. He knows our pain, our history, and our deepest struggles. And just as he saw the man at Bethesda, he sees you and me. This is the first step in our healing, knowing that Jesus hasn't forgotten us. Healing begins with a willing heart. When Jesus asked, "Do you want to get well?" he was addressing more than just the man's physical condition. Healing isn't only about fixing our bodies or circumstances. It's about being ready to embrace a new way of living. Sometimes we become so accustomed to our pain, our limitations, or our past that we can't imagine life without them. Jesus is asking us today, are you ready to let go of what's holding you back? Are you ready to step into a new identity, free from what has been keeping you down for so long? Real transformation starts with a willingness to be changed from the inside out. Stop focusing on obstacles and start focusing on Jesus. The man was focused on the pool as his only chance of healing. He said, "I have no one to help me into the pool." But Jesus showed him that the pool wasn't necessary. Jesus was the source of his healing. We often fall into a trap of thinking that our breakthrough can only come through one particular way. It could be a job, a person, a financial opportunity. But Jesus wants us to take our eyes off the obstacles and look to him as the true source of all we need. Healing and transformation don't come from our circumstances aligning perfectly. They come from trusting in the one who is in control of every circumstance. Faith requires action. So Jesus told the man to get up, pick up your mat, and walk. This was a bold command, especially for someone who hadn't walked for 38 years. But the man didn't hesitate. He acted in faith, trusting in the word of Jesus. Faith often requires us to step out before we see the results. Jesus didn't lift the man up. He commanded him to take action, and in doing so, the man was healed. Likewise, our faith is made alive through action. When Jesus speaks to us, we need to respond in faith, even if the outcome isn't yet visible. It's in these moments of obedience that God's power is released. Leave behind what once defined you. So, Jesus told the man to pick up his mat, the very thing that had been associated with his paralysis for 38 years. That mat represented his past, his limitations, his suffering. By picking it up, the man was making a public statement. I am no longer defined by my past. I am moving forward into a new life. And in the same way, Jesus calls us to leave behind what has defined us for so long, our failures, our fears, our hurts. He calls us to walk forward, no longer held back by what once kept us bound. The reaction of the Pharisees. So interestingly, the healing took place on the Sabbath. And the religious leaders of the day were more concerned about the man carrying his mat, considered work on the Sabbath, than they were about the miracle of his healing. They questioned him, challenged his actions, instead of rejoicing in his newfound freedom. This part of the story reminds us that not everyone will understand or celebrate the work that God does in our lives. There will always be people who focus on the rules, the details, or their expectation of how things should happen, instead of seeing the miracle that God is doing. But just like this man, we must stay focused on the truth of what Jesus has done for us, regardless of how others react. So, the story of the healing at the Pool of Bethesda is a powerful reminder of the transformative power of Jesus. He is the one who sees us in our pain, invites us into healing, and gives us strength to step out in faith. So, as we close today, I encourage you to reflect on these questions. Are you ready to get well? Are you willing to leave behind the old mindsets, limitations, and struggles that have defined you for too long? Are you ready to fix your eyes on Jesus and step into the new life He offers? You know, healing and transformation are not always instant, but they are always available to us when we open our hearts to Jesus and act in faith. So let's be a people who are willing to trust in Him, to pick up our mats, and to walk boldly into the future He has for us. As you go about your weekend, keep this in mind. Jesus is still asking, do you want to get well? The answer you give could change your life. Amen. Thank you for joining me today, my friends. Tomorrow I'll be back with the Gospel of John, chapter 6. I can't wait to see you. I look forward to this time together every single day. You're amazing. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.